Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of S24 Insight. And we'll be talking about mentorship. Mentorship is often described as one person guiding another, but that is only maybe part of the truth. A good mentor does not only shape the mentee also stretches the mentor, testing patience, renewing purpose, challenging assumptions, and sometimes reminding the mentor why the work matters. Today we ask, what really happens when knowledge is passed from one generation, one professional, one life to another? Joining me on this conversation again is our lead consultant and also the Director of Strategy, Research and Global Partnerships, a documentarian, storyteller, teacher, trainer, and mentor. Many hearts there, right? Welcome to S24 Insight again, John.
Thank you very much.
Today we're talking about mentorship. What is mentorship and what is it not?
I think mentorship is your favourite subject. Is being able to help others to navigate some of the challenges that you've experienced yourself on your journey, not doing it for them, but explaining to them some of the pitfalls to look out for, some of the signs for navigating your way through the sort of, the corporate or the education or through the public sector, and just giving words of wisdom and support and encouragement at the right time, which is, again, not doing it for them and making it easy, but just giving them a bit of a heads up on what's coming. I think it's a vital role.
It is really a vital role, and it's something that really interests me because a lot of people shape me to become who I am today as mentors. I think in a previous interview with a young person that got good or right amount of mentorship, he called it responsible mentorship, and in return the mentees needs to also know there is boundary and there's when to push and when not to push. So in your opinion, in what ways is mentorship different from friendship, supervision, coaching, sponsorship, parenting or teaching?
I think it's quite a unique role. I think to be asked by someone to mentor them is probably one of the most important things. It's certainly humbling for me, because what it says is that person thinks that you've got some kind of knowledge or wisdom or magical insight to pass on. And I think also it's not for me to automatically say yes. It's also thinking about, am I the right person to mentor them? Do I have the necessary information? I could then guide them to someone else who might mentor them and then support them while they're going through their mentorship. So it's not something that I just automatically do because I don't treat it lightly, and I think it's important.
And nobody should treat mentorship lightly. If you know you can't give the guidance, don't give them a false kind of reality that they would get that from you. What makes a mentor truly useful?
I think a mentor is truly useful when you, as the mentee, have taken the time to really understand who the person is that you're asking to mentor you. Do they actually have the relevant experience? Not just a nice person, or not just knowledgeable, or maybe not just someone that's well known or well respected, or is a face in a particular industry. Because don't forget as well, if you've not done your homework and you don't really know them very well, then you have no idea how they got to where they were. So actually, are they going to pass on any information that's going to be of use to you? So I think actually doing your own homework and researching your mentor before, particularly if you don't know them that well, and find out a bit more about them, because sometimes what people say on their LinkedIn profile about their trajectory to where they are now, is not necessarily always the truth.
Yes, sometimes it's artificial or augmented reality. That's what I call it. So what makes a mentee ready to be mentored by the right, responsible mentor? Well,
I think from my perspective is always the fact that, do I think the mentee has that kind of approach, which I think is key, which is that lifelong learning. Because most people that have come to me in the past, I always felt like it was more about who I knew or what doors I could open for them to go through and do their own thing anyway, without any kind of change. I think so. It's more about, are you looking at that person and thinking they're willing to change maybe habits, maybe improve the way they conduct themselves, maybe they might want a particular skill that you might not have, but you can help them with everything else and then put them in touch with someone that can actually do some coaching about a specific part. I mean, a lot of people come to me about, where do you get your confidence from? Can you help me with public speaking? And I think the best mentor is always someone who explains to you that it's not magic. It's not you're not born with this skill. It's something that you can learn, and just enables you to get those skills rather than thinking it's going to cost you a lot of money or you've got to do a lot of courses. Sometimes it's just re-evaluating what you think that you've done and looking at it from a slightly different perspective, and you suddenly realise you're further ahead than you are. So I don't need to mentor you. What I just need to do is just maybe be a sounding board that you can ring occasionally, and you need to do a qualification, or you need to do some self-study, or watch a TEDx talk, or hit YouTube quite hard to find some of those subjects. So a lot of the time, mentoring is not about spending time with your mentee. It's more about, I always saw myself as a guide. When I taught at the university, I saw myself less as a lecturer or a teacher and more as a sort of a guide. I'll show you where you can go looking for these things. You choose to go through that door or you don't.
You said something really troubling. Mentees come in, or people come in for mentorship for just some certain reasons, to get doors open for them, not the mentorship in the real sense of it. So can mentorship work when the mentee is talented but not disciplined?
Yeah, I think what happens there is it's about shortcuts. They're using you for shortcuts. I would say actually there's a lot of people that I've come across that sit on the board of companies or public institutions or NGOs and charities that are doing it for their LinkedIn profile, which is great. And I think that what happens then is a CEO, or maybe not a strong CEO, will then gather a board of people like that around them that make them look good rather than actually make a difference. And this is what we really need to be sort of looking at and examining, if you like, putting under the microscope, is what is the mentor going to get from you, from your perspective as the mentor, and then being very honest about, well, actually, I don't think you need mentoring. What you might need is you might need coaching about something specific, or to go away and get a discipline themselves, which is, a better work ethic, a better approach to the world. And, probably 1 in 5 people that come to me would I end up mentoring, because most of the time it's shortcut. Where can I go? Who do you know? Can you get me there quicker? And it's very, very rare that I do take on a mentor, a mentee. And when I do take on a mentee, it's always for a specific reason and a particular period of time. I don't want them to think I'm always going to be there. This should be something that's short, sharp, learning, pushing yourself, pushing them out the comfort zone. A bit like a friend who might tell you what you want to hear. You need to be, quite open and honest with people.
So just to go back to the last question, can mentorship work when the mentee is talented but not disciplined?
Yes and no. I think if they're talented, sometimes they don't need a mentor. What they need is someone who can coach them to be better at what they do, or to add a different talent. Sometimes when someone's not talented, but they've got the right kind of commitment, then you're able to help them to navigate where they should be looking and who they should be talking to, and also what you should be spending your time doing. It always amazes me when you come across some of these famous quotes, and it says, if you want to make films, then watch films. If you want to write books, then read books. And it's amazing the amount of people that come to me talking about the media or getting into the media industry, particularly students that I used to teach at a university, that we were doing communication arts but didn't really understand what the art of communication was, or even how to tell a story. And so until you know the basics, it's very difficult to become proficient and then go on and become a leading light in a particular sector if you don't do your homework and know a little bit about the sector.
In your opinion, what is the biggest misunderstanding young people have about mentorship?
I think, I'm going to blame the internet for this one, I think we did a conversation about work culture, about the internet suddenly made everybody think that they could have their own company and be a CEO without understanding the mechanics of different parts of an organisation. And I would say that mentorship is similar in that young people sometimes get quick fixes from watching a TEDx or watching a YouTube series, or following an influencer's advice about how to get rich quick on TikTok. And what you find with a mentor, as a mentor myself, is that you end up undoing a lot of the things that your mentee thinks are true, because so-and-so said this. Well, that's not correct. Why do you think that's correct? And so a lot of it's about, if you can come across someone, particularly if a mentee contacts you, it's more about, well, why do you want mentoring? It's normally because they're looking to get to the next level, and you're a shortcut or a bit of an accelerator to do that. And if someone's not done their homework, as in they understand the subjects and that kind of stuff, and have learnt from almost like very lazy stereotype ways of learning about a particular subject, like they've only read Wikipedia, for example, then they're the sort of people that I tend to mentor. And then I let them down in a nice, gentle way, which is, well, watch this documentary or read this book and then come back to me. And normally what happens then is you just flush people out because they were never interested in doing the hard work, because it is hard work to be mentored as a mentee, because you have to put yourself out there and meet the expectations of your mentor, which you need to agree in advance.
I think that's really germane, and most times it's just the access that people are looking for. So many people want access through a mentor. Fewer really want formation, and mentorship without formation becomes networking with no roots. With this, we'll go on a short break. When we return, we'll talk about the mentee receiving guidance without losing their self. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back. If you just joined us, it's still S24 Insight with our guest, John Costa, the Director of Strategy, Research and Global Partnerships for S24, a documentarian, a teacher, former military person, and that's a lot to put in one person. When you talk about the mentor-mentee relationship, receiving guidance without losing self, it should be both ways. It shouldn't be just for the mentee to not lose themselves, or for the mentor, because the mentor is the maybe superior person there and might less likely lose themselves trying to mentor a younger person. What do you think, or what attitude a mentee bring into a serious mentorship relationship?
I think it's a willingness to change. And we sometimes see it very much sold as a way of you're willing to learn, but learning isn't just about the retaining of information or new information. Actually, it's about change itself. Everything you learn should change you. It should impact you, broaden your horizons, give you a depth of character, make you think of people in a slightly different way that makes you a better person when it comes to engaging in people. So for me, I think if I was to, as a mentor, espouse that my mentee should have a lifelong love of learning, then I should be looking to learn from the mentee as well. What can they add to my knowledge pool? Well, it might just be that you understand then that Gen Z has this view of your subject. So that's, for me, that's market knowledge. That's market intelligence. That's me doing a bit of research that comes to me. So I think it's important that we really understand that it's a two-way relationship, and because of the age difference that invariably tends to be involved. I mean, I'll give you a classic example. We have a young journalist that works here that has been mentored for you for quite a long, has been a mentee to you for quite a long time, and then she reached out to me about a documentary that she was making about disability and said, can you give me some advice on this? Can you look at that? And you think, well, that's because you've done a good job as a mentor. You've realised that it's not you're the one that knows all the information and all the answer, but you need to constantly seek advice. So I'm not mentoring that person. I'm probably giving them some advice and guidance about what they do. IAG, isn't it? Information, advice and guidance. But at the same time, that says much more to me about that mentee, that they're willing to approach two people to be able to get that information. And I think the key for me would be, can we instill in that person, if it's not already there, that when a new member of staff joins the newsroom, that she takes on the responsibility to make sure she shows people the ropes and all that, because then you're starting to develop the experience of someone to become a good mentor themselves. And that's not age, that's more about wisdom and knowledge and the ability to navigate, the challenges of life and particularly work culture. Yeah,
so it simply means that a mentor-mentee relationship should be symbiotic. It might not be that the mentor is getting so much from the mentee like the mentee will do, but then it should be symbiotic. You're learning the Gen Z way of doing some certain things, knowledge about them, etc. So when should a mentee question the mentor, and what's the most respectful way to do it?
I think it's asking for times that it didn't necessarily go as planned, not how you do it. I think anybody who comes in and says, what did you do to get where you are? they're looking for this kind of linear path of how it was, incredibly smooth. Well, of course, mine's, as you well know, is an interesting circuitous route to including fire and explosions and falling into a pit. So I think it's more about explaining to people that life is about being tested. There's nothing in life that comes that's easy, and if it is, it's invariably fake. And if it's too good to be true, then it invariably is. And so it's then learning about character traits about themselves, but also the kind of characters they should look out for, both good and bad, that are going to impact their career path or their chosen area that they want to get into. So I think it's that constant challenging, and a mentee can challenge a mentor by saying, tell me a little bit more about that. Don't take everything at face value. When I get questioned about, if I say, I did it this way, and then they ask me a question, I never think, well, that's my answer. I always think that's really interesting. Let's go back. Well, actually, let's break that down together and let's think about that. And invariably, I've learned something new about a situation that I thought I knew everything about because I was there, and you actually learn a little bit more about it yourself.
What are the red flags of a mentee who may waste mentorship?
Who do you know? The question, and I think also they're not used to being asked, why do you want me to mentor you? Because normally it's playing to the ego of the mentor. I've seen plenty of mentors who are in it for the glory and the sort of, I've got 15 people that I'm mentoring and all that, and I think to myself, well, what are they learning? Because how can you mentor 15 people? If you could mentor 15 people, you'd be a teacher or a lecturer. And here you are running a business. So this is about surrounding yourself with sycophantic people that are listening to and hanging on every word that you're doing. And you're not really dispensing wisdom. What you're dispensing is your own arrogance. You're sharing that with. So I think it's making sure that every situation is judged from the perspective of, what are they getting out of it? What are you getting out of it? And also, can you add value? For me, like I said, I no longer fear saying no to people that I can't mentor them, because I'm confident in the answer as to why I can articulate why I can't mentor them. And I think that's important.
So in what ways can young professionals avoid dependency and become self-directed? Because some mentees are totally dependent on their mentors. Every move that they need to make, they need to get like a go-ahead from the mentor. And so in what ways can young professionals avoid over-dependency and become self-directed with their mentor in the picture?
I think we live in a society that's very much around, a lot of our opinions or views of the world come from social media. Now, whether that's a lack of having conversations with parents or elders sitting around a table having dinner because everyone's on their smartphone, I'm not sure. So it's more thinking about, if you're going to get someone to mentor you, what is it that you want? How do I keep myself preserved? How do I not change my character, as in who I am, what I believe, to a point where I'm no longer that person? I'm replicating, I'm duplicating, I'm becoming my mentor. Well, the world doesn't need two of your mentors. The world needs you to be totally unique. There's only one of you. Your views might be shaped by the media or those around you, but you're going to add much more, particularly as a young professional, if you have certain character traits that are around integrity and trust and honesty and resilience and the ability to adapt and fit in with a team environment, as opposed to just becoming a replica of the boss, because invariably you've not been through a lot of the challenges they've had, and if they don't tell you those, then they're not being truthful.
So what is the difference between using a mentor and actually respecting them with their knowledge?
Yeah, that's a good one, isn't it? Because I think, like I said, normally for me it's about taking time to sit and talk to someone as to why they want me to be their mentor. And it's like, I normally have like red flags, certain questions they ask you about, who do you know, and how long did it take? That's another one, because anybody who asks you about time is time conscious. So if they said to you, how long did it take you to get to where you are? Then you turn around and go, well, my whole life, rather than a period of time. And so I think these are the things that, it's spending the time to talk to the mentee, say, I'm doing my research, I'm getting to know you before I agree. Because what tends to happen is, will you mentor me? Yes, great, we start. And you go, well, actually, I don't know anything about you. I might be teaching you, or I might be your work colleague, but at the same time, I don't know anything about you. So let's go and have a cup of coffee. Let's have a chat. Why do you want to be mentored? Why do you need mentoring? And invariably, it's just about someone said something to them about a character trait that they have that this person didn't like, but that doesn't mean that that person was right. And so I would say one of the things I particularly enjoy about mentoring is finding someone that's been damaged by someone else because of their view of the world and how arrogant they are. They've got the wrong mentor. The wrong mentor set out to tell them how to do it and to destroy them. And so you end up rebuilding it, and you might not necessarily move that person on career-wise, but as a human being, as a part of humanity, you've actually repaired a lot of the damage that society's done, and then take a personal responsibility to find them the right mentor for who they are now, rather than where they'd been crushed to. So helping people to rebuild and get back to calibration. I then draw on a lot of personal things from my own past and kind of share that, and then they suddenly realise, well, you can be who you are that I see now maybe on a screen, but you've been through all of that. How are you even able to sit there and be on the screen and go, that's what we're going to do? Let's get to the point where you can sit there and have a conversation without that either damaging you or destroying you or getting upset or emotional, and you're able to function.
That's really important, and this conversation should always continue, because mentors are not supposed to be machines or people you just use as shortcuts. They are human. They give time, thought, correction, experience, networks, sometimes even emotional labor. So what does mentorship do to the mentor and also the mentee as well? I think we've speak to that a little bit. Let's dive a little bit deeper into this before we call it a wrap. In what ways do you think mentoring others change the mentor?
For me, it has a real impact, because what it does is it allows you to either think about, like I said, that person, that generation, and also it demonstrates a lot to me that someone's gone away, and then when you're having a conversation, they say something to you about your past, or why did you make that decision then? What had happened in your life that made you change career or change career path? And what that says to me is that person is willing to put themselves out to ask about you. A lot of the times I often say to people, who wants to ask me a question? If I'm talking to a room, who wants to ask me a question about something they've seen on my LinkedIn profile? Very rarely get a question. But if I was going to interview someone, the first thing I would do is I would go to the acceptable public face that people put out there. That's how they want to be seen in a corporate way, is go to someone's LinkedIn profile. Now, if you can drill down behind that a little bit and discover why they took on that career path, why did you volunteer here, why did you do that course, why did you go back to education, why did you travel, John, why are you working in Nigeria? If they ask you those kind of questions, they're the people that I want. I want people that are inquisitive, that are looking to learn, but are looking to learn from me, not how to do it, not how to look like this, but how to be me, as in how the world view that I have, and the ability to have a conversation and talk about these subjects. Like I said, as soon as it says shortcut, that for me is, and they mention time, is a red flag. Yeah.
Does teaching force you to clarify what you truly know as a mentor?
Absolutely. If you cannot explain in the simplest form to someone what a task is or how to go about a task, you don't understand it. Okay, so I think for me, I learnt that in the army. That was one of those things, fail, test and adjust. If you can't, I was a recruit NCO, I used to help train recruits as well. So if you can't do that, it's not about destroying someone then teaching them a skill, it's about giving them the confidence to be able to acquire that skill and then apply it. So I think it's very similar. There's a lot to be learned, I think, about people leaving a military environment, becoming teachers and educators, because there's a certain discipline there that we don't really have and we're not getting from the family structure, that by the time I found that when they got to university and they were coming to me, they very rarely had an opinion that was their own, and they'd had a life that they saw through their own bubble, but they had no real kind of context of where they fitted in social strata or class or structure. And so teaching communication arts was always wonderful, because it was an opportunity to talk about society and history and geography. And then when you got round to how to use the media, it was about using the media to make an understanding of the world. But we'd gone on a bit of an exploration. So I enjoyed the 6 years that I taught at the university, because like I said, I saw myself as a guide, and then the people that I mentored or do extra things with now, even to today, why I'm here in Nigeria for 4 weeks, are liking things that I put on LinkedIn. And when I see it, I just think that's great, because the time I spent with you was time well spent, because we're still connected on LinkedIn, and you still take the time to give me a thumbs up for what I'm doing. That says you understood what we were doing then.
Yes,
I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of that.
And that's impact. Can a mentee renew a mentor's sense of purpose?
I think so, but also at the same time you have to be really careful that as a mentor you're not masking your need to have a mentee to pass information on as something that's wrong with you. And I mean wrong as in the nicest way, as in, like, you know, are you burnt out? Have you got work-life balance? Or have you got a mental health issue and stuff like that? Don't look for artificial ways to prop yourself up, because, you know, drugs, alcohol, get yourself a mentee, they're exactly the same thing. As what they are is they're excuses for not dealing with yourself. So I would be very aware and give a lot of advice to anyone that's seeking a mentor who is a mentee, is to, you know, look at 2 or 3, meet them, and then make a decision about who is consistent. You know, who is consistent in their messaging, who is consistent in their attire, who is consistent in who you see them with, the kind of things that they do. Because it's easy to make an instant judgment about someone the first time you meet them. You go, oh, I was very impressed with so-and-so. They're going to be great. And you go, well, you've met them once for 5 minutes. How are you making that judgment? You know, for me, it was always about, I'm not rushing to say yes. Come and support one of my events. Come and help me do this. Come and help me co-host that. As soon as a mentee is putting themselves out in a way that they don't automatically see the fact that what they're doing for you or with you is benefiting them, then you shouldn't be doing it. But someone said, oh yeah, I'll come along, that's great. What you're doing is you're observing them in a situation where they don't think at that moment they're being mentored.
That's really very important. What are the emotional costs of mentoring someone who is inconsistent, entitled, or ungrateful?
Yeah, I think it can be catastrophic. I think it can be really damaging to a mentor, and it's not something that I think everybody automatically has the ability to do. I think there's some very successful people that, you know, shouldn't become a mentor to people, because it would make them feel they've got to change. And I think this is the thing, if you're not willing to change and put yourself out there to mentee someone, then it shouldn't be for you. It can be quite damaging. And also, if you have one who's very needy, really what they've done is they've got under your radar, because you should have flushed that out in your initial meeting rather than one meeting. So, of course I'll mentor you. You know, you're playing to my ego. I feel fantastic about it. And then this person comes with maybe a lot of emotional baggage from their personal life or childhood, but also from, you know, I often find from previous tutors or lecturers or, you know, work colleagues or even teachers who have just turned around and said to them, you know, you're stupid or you'll never make it. And I like to know, when I make the decision of saying, yes, I'm going to mentor you, that I'm in for the long haul, or for the period of time that we agree, based on the fact that I understand what I'm getting myself into, not just what I'm going to tell them and how I'm going to help them.
When does mentorship becomes unhealthy?
When there's no boundary, I think. You know what I mean? Boundaries are very important. We talk about boundaries in relationships, we talk about boundaries in work culture, and I think all of these things are really important. And then when suddenly you get to that point where there's, you know, they're coming round and meeting your family, and, you know, there's dinner, or you're taking them to events and all that sort of stuff, and it almost becomes like you become like a unit. Just stop mentoring them, you know, and employ them. And I think that's the thing where you need to be thinking about is this person now better off as being an employee that can go into your structure and get more from the people that you employ? Because obviously you put a great deal of time and effort into recruiting these people, rather than this person that maybe from the people in your organisation gets a lot of your time that they don't get as an employer. And they seem to be influencing you in ways that are not healthy.
Yeah, and that's really important. I think we need to talk about institutions as well, because in institutions, mentorship is not just it is succession planning. It is how knowledge survives turnover. It is the generations that we want to build and the way we put these things for them. Why do many organizations fail at mentorship?
They fail at mentorship because they don't approach it from the point of view is that what you're trying to do really is to change your institution for the better from how you do it. I think, I'll give you an example here. In the UK, an intern is seen as someone who's cheap labour. Okay, whereas the approach that we take here with S24, with the interns that we've got, is very much around embedded institutionalised mentoring, because what it's saying is that as an intern you have a role to play straight away. They're recording content, they're recording some of our programming, and that's changed the relationship from the organisation with the intern, because suddenly it's not about cheap labour. I said to them, none of you have made me a cup of tea while I've been in Nigeria for 3 weeks, because you've been making content. But what is it that we can do? So let's talk about how we can plan things. Let's give you a project that you can run yourself. So I think internships, when done well, are a way of taking on multiple mentees that need mentoring, but in a way where it becomes much more about the career and less about them as an individual.
And finally, what is the most important lesson your mentees have taught you?
That I don't know everything. That no matter how they view you or how you represent yourself on LinkedIn, that you still have so much more to learn to be a better person, because what it does is it really makes you analyse all the things that you've done, particularly my career trajectory. And you hit 60 and you suddenly you're at this age where people think that you've lived a life, which I have in many ways, in multiple ways I've lived a life. But it's like you still need to be thinking about how you can share that knowledge in a way that's going to benefit people. So the things that were really bad or something negative that's happened to you, I've had the time to think about that and draw out, why did I get in that situation? What was the impact of that? How can I stop someone else from being in that situation? And also I think my final point about being a mentor and a mentee, and we spoke about age and older people and younger people. Sometimes people that are your age don't need friendship, they need mentoring and support. So I think it's one of those things that there's a whole raft of people that won't consider themselves to be a mentee because they think they're too old.
That's really germane, and let's quickly do a rapid fire because our time is well spent or far spent or it's over. And it should be short answers, sharp, very quickly. Mentor or teacher?
Mentor.
Talent or discipline?
Discipline.
Access or consistency?
Say that again.
Access or consistency?
Access or consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Correction or encouragement?
Encouragement.
Humility or confidence?
Humility.
Sponsorship or mentorship?
Mentorship.
One red flag in a mentee?
How long is it going to take?
One mistake mentors must avoid?
Thinking they can make a difference.
Complete this. Mentorship is?
The sharing of life experience.
Thank you so much, John Costa, for joining us on this edition. Again, today's conversation reminds us that mentorship is not charity. It is continuity. And it is the quiet transfer of wisdom, discipline, confidence, mistakes, networks, and responsibility. And a mentor plants what they may not fully harvest. A mentee receives what they must one day multiply. And when mentorship works properly, it does more than produce careers. It produces character. So we leave you with this question. Who shaped you? And who is becoming better because you chose to show up for them? I am Halima Abdurrauf, and this is S24 Insight. Bye for now.